inaugural meeting of the Economic Growth and Development Subcommittee. It's my first one, so I expect lots of little faux pas throughout the course of this meeting, but please forgive me, I will try and get better over time. We're going to start with the karakia, which is going to be led by Councillor Urungi.
Whakatakataho ki te uru, whakatakataho ki te tonga, ki mā kina uta, ki mā taratara ki tai, e hi aki ana tātou kura, he tio, he hoka, he hohu, ti hei mauri ora.
Okay, so first of all, we'll kick off with apologies. We have a apology for lateness by Deputy Mayor McNulty and also Mayor Little, and also just a note that Puiu Kelly may need to leave a little bit early should we continue on longer than expected. So I need to move the motion, so I'll move that. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Foon. Those in favour, please press 1. This is very exciting, this. Councillor Calvert and Councillor Young. Two that aren't here obviously can't vote. Okay, that's passed. Are there any conflicts of interest? Nope. Excellent. There are no items on the agenda, so that makes it nice and easy as well, so we can go straight into public participation. We're going to start with Serge Van Dam and Phil Royal. If you'd like to come to the front and have your say.
Okay, great. We're going to have our say. How do we get the slideware up? Is that easy? Perfect. We'll test the machinery. I'm going to try it. Easy peasy. Good to go? Perfect. We're going to start with a provocation or a question. In the next 5 minutes, if you could write down on a piece of paper in front of you, who do you think will be the next 5 industrial champions in Wellington? So we're asking you to predict something. So, over $1 billion in annualised revenue. Those companies have to have less than $100 million in revenue today. If you can think of any that you think will have more than $1 billion in annualised revenues, please write them down on a piece of paper. We will pop quiz you at the end. Thank you. Or, do you want to go?
Look, first of all, thanks for having us along today. Appreciate the audience. We are startup capital, and it's fairly nascent in terms of where we're at the moment. There's a small group of people that came out of various industries and persuasions. I'm a founder of a startup in Wellington and also the ex-managing partner of PwC in Wellington. Serge?
Yeah, and I'm a startup investor, mostly focused on software, a little bit of AI stuff these days, but your early stage investor, and I've lived in Wellington most of my life, but I've been elsewhere as well. So that's us, and with us not today, because he is having some challenges with the City Council himself, is Ralph, who is the founder of Volpara, which is an exited software company.
Right. Look, and so our proposal today is just really to focus on startups. And we've spent, this may be a positive or a negative for some, but out of the Vision for Wellington and the Welly Forge sort of initiatives, we've pulled people together, and I guess our focus that we've put down that we want to discuss is, first of all, we'd like to see Wellington as the easiest and the best city in the world from which to launch an adventurous startup. Our mission is to give birth to 100 adventurous startups per year by 2030. And that includes 2 unicorns, over $1 billion in value per annum to the city stable by 2030. And it also has the highest startup density of any mid-sized city on the planet. Now that sounds like a bold aspiration, but it actually isn't that hard. Many parts of the ecosystem exist in the city already. We are already the startup city. As you know, Air Zero come out of here, Trade Me, Parts Trader recently, and we can talk a little bit more about that. Volpara, and the list goes on. So really, what we're doing is talking about the ecosystem in terms of what it takes to get us to those sorts of goals and those metrics. But we also have Creative HQ and Taiawa Hub and other aspects, the Founders Group, etc. So many parts of the ecosystem already exist.
Yep, but we think it's a viable, believable, credible mission. We've also just defined it, just to tighten it up so that people are clear on what we mean by a startup, which is basically an organisation that builds, owns its own proprietary, globally relevant intellectual property, and that can be, and it's either in the domains of software, business innovation, creative, or deep science, or deep tech, with high margins. So we're very clear on the kind of companies we're talking about when we say a startup. Someone, creating a printing shop or a cafe might be starting a company, but that's not what we mean when we say 100 startups being born every year. Does that make sense? Yep. Perfect. Why startups? It's very, very easy. Politicians will always be inclined to want to be seen with an All Black. They also want to be seen with an already successful company. That's natural. But like human beings, the first 1,000 days are the most important and the most determined of a human, they're the most deterministic of a company as well. So in order to have at-scale companies, unicorns, whatever label you want to give them, we think the focus, and given the resource constraints of the City Council and associated entities, we think the entire focus from an economic development perspective should be on startups. Again, just think about the first 1,000 days. That doesn't mean you can't do things that are as the company grows, and for big companies. Obviously, big companies don't really need much from you other than to make the city as livable as possible for its employees and so on. But that to me sits outside the direct economic development agenda we're talking about today.
State of play. We have momentum, as I said, in terms of the ecosystem, but it's not optimal at this point. It's a little disconnected, and there's no concentration or focus around the whole ecosystem. We have a number of startups. We have, surprisingly enough, for many people, more than 300 in the city. If you asked me to name them, I couldn't name them either, but there is a full list of what those startups are, and most people in the city can't name 2 or 3 startups, let alone 300. Just to give you an idea of the sort of exits that are in the last year, there's been $1 billion worth of exits, $1 billion New Zealand worth of exits in Wellington. Parts Trader, Volpara, and some others. Later on, if you want a little bit of the story of Parts Trader, happy to give you the background. That's a live one at the moment, and employs 170 people in the city, and there's a whole story around it over the last sort of 10 years. And then, as I said before, Creative HQ and Taiawa are a big part of the startup ecosystem in the city. They're useful and important, but they're not the answer. So they're one part of a much bigger ecosystem, which they contribute to and have been very positive in sponsoring that whole, but it needs more of a push for it to be optimal.
Perfect. And so what can you do to help? So we've provided a 20-point plan with a whole lot of buckets of investment. Again, we know you're quite constrained from investment, so we're not saying there's a whole lot of cash to fly around. In fact, we're saying the opposite. You don't have much cash, so I want to say we don't have much cash. So focus is really, really important. Does anyone want to... did anyone answer the question from the start? Does anyone want to throw out some names out there in terms of companies that are going to be worth more than $1 billion in revenue in the next 10 years?
Okay, I went OpenStar.
Okay.
Henry, but I didn't know if they weren't already over 100 million.
They're not,
but
so it's good.
I'm pretty much there. That was it.
Anyone else?
Volpara, yep.
Okay, anyone else? Well, whenever we ask a question to anyone, the only thing they can come up with is technology companies. It's not an accident, we don't believe. Our view is it's actually the only economic development option available to Wellington. Feel free to challenge other people and ask them the same question. And that's why we think the most important thing you can do is plant lots and lots of seeds of these kind of companies that in the future might become these unicorns. And hopefully they'll be as successful as Volpara or whatever. So obviously that's why we're asking that you acknowledge publicly that this is actually the biggest economic development opportunity that Wellington has. tell stories about that, and obviously some of you, including the Mayor and some others here, have done that. We think you should all adopt at least one startup. So adopting a startup a year, just so that you actually get to know them, get to understand their challenges, their opportunities, and what's possible for them. In my personal opinion, the biggest challenge in the political sphere is that most people simply don't understand how big the opportunities are for a Volpara or an Open Star or a Henry, right? There's unlimited potential for them, which is just simply not true of other parts of our economy, whether that be the services economy, government work, etc.
So in terms of that, adopting a startup, we can provide a list of who's there and who might be in those, and you know, as a group, you select them in terms of who you want to, who you'd like to go and visit or adopt or whatever. But it will give you a sense of how big this industry already is and how important it is to the city. Because I think I'll just reinforce as to what we've said here is that actually, and Serge's perspective is the same as mine, is that basically it's our only option in the city for economic growth at scale. And I add the at scale because I think it's there's lots of other smaller things happening in the city, but this has significant benefit to the city.
We'll open it for questions. We could go on, but I appreciate we have limited time. So
Yeah, great. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Great presentation. Councillor Young.
I want to ask two questions. So first of all, how many are there already over 1 billion in Wellington?
If you don't count Zero and Trade Me would be the only two.
Okay, thank you. Second question is...
Sorry, I'd put Weta in that category as well. Oh, yeah, FNZ. Sorry, sincere apologies. Yeah,
that is correct.
Yeah, we should have come with our list. Sincere apologies. So they're already there, yep. So we need to give birth to two more of those every year for the rest of the history.
Okay, thank you. So the other question, which is in a slightly different area, what effect does the Wellington's commercial rate level have on startups?
I don't think it's, we can go and debate rates, and I don't think it's material in the scheme of things.
Because they're quite small.
Well, and they also don't own.
Yeah, they're renting.
The rates might get passed on to them in rent, but they don't. None of those startups own their own businesses, own their own buildings, etc.
And they don't want to either.
Okay, thank you.
Much bigger issue, order of magnitude, is livability, homelessness. Do I want to be here? Do people want to come and work for us? That sort of stuff is a way bigger issue.
Especially with the young people, actually, surprisingly enough.
Thank you.
Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. At the presentation that you were at the other week at Vic Uni, there was a number of startups, but there was a presentation about stand-ups.
Scale-ups, you mean? Yeah.
I thought they said stand-ups. Was it scale-ups?
Scale-ups, yeah. I think is the language we're using. Yeah.
So and there was talk about how we should start thinking about the scale-ups as opposed to the startups. So I just wonder if you could comment. Got any views on that?
Yep. So scale-ups, companies that are basically already have what's called product market fit, i.e. they have a product that has well understood economics, margin, distribution strategies. So those companies exist. In order to become a billion-dollar revenue business, you at some point need to go from startup to scale up. So they exist. They have needs. So we think those needs should be met. But what the position we've come to is that just the entire focus of the economic development plan should be on startups. Hopefully, in 1, 2, 3, 5 years from now, you'll have a different problem, which is, hey, we're giving birth to a whole lot of companies, but they now need support in leadership development, internationalization, all these other things, which is true, but that should be tomorrow's problem. So our bid is really one of focus.
Okay.
And because we're aware that Creative HQ is talking after us, and they're doing quite a lot of good stuff in the scale-up world, et cetera, as well.
Okay.
But our provocation is, let's have a narrow focus for a sustained period of time to just give birth.
Thank you.
We didn't talk about AI, but there's a massive disruption, obviously, today and coming to our city as well. And that's just going to mean that we actually make it easier and easier for these people to set up companies. Sorry.
Thank you.
Councillor Foon.
Yeah, two questions, if that's all right, Chair. One, just wanted to talk about startup infrastructure, so physical space. how critical, because that feels like a gap at the moment, how critical is that in your view to making this a success?
Yeah, very critical. It's actually about an epicentre. It's not about space. Anyone can find a space to put a desk, but actually you want collaboration, exchange of ideas, shared services like legal services, accounting, IP, all of that stuff, right? So in the end, you actually need an epicentre for your tech sector, broadly speaking. Yes, I think space is really, really important. And then over time, as those companies scale, you want them to be, in some sort of precinct or something similar. It's no surprise Silicon Valley is a high and deep concentration of talent. It didn't happen by accident, per se.
Okay. Council mandate and recommendation 2. What will that bring or not bring if it isn't mandated, I guess, but how critical is it for council to mandate the mahi that's going on and support it?
When you say mandate, what do you mean in that context?
You've got recommendation 2, council mandate, establish a clear Wellington startup-centric mandate for the council-funded accelerator incubator.
It's just an issue of concentration and focus. So companies will get born, founders will start, some of them will succeed, some will fail, some will scale, some will not, all of that. I just think from a small city that's struggling for a variety of good and bad reasons, the ability to focus on giving birth is really, really important. And I just think the provocation we're bringing today is, you as an economic development forum of sorts, you guys should say, we're going to focus on making it really, really easy to start an adventurous, going global tech company.
And at the simplest end of that, I think it's a city that welcomes and is open to that investment and acknowledges it. Because some of that investment comes from offshore, whether it be people or money. And at the other, more complex end is actually being really clear in defining what sectors we're in to launch startups. We're not, it's not a focus on everything. But we are logically positioned to concentrate on a number of startups. Fintech is one, because we've got history in that space. Another one is obviously GovTech, which hasn't really been opened up in the city for us yet, and we need to open it up because it's just another logical start. There's some great work going on in the science space, and there's some good work going on in terms of some of the work that that Creative HQ has done around starting to open up the climate tech side of things as well, as a start, and it's not for us to define them, but it is. Those are the 3 or 4 that we've, probably put our hands up and said, look, we're already doing some good stuff in there, so let's go after those and make sure those happen. And for Creative HQ, and I know Catherine will talk through this herself, but we need them to help push through 100 of these new accelerators, incubators, startups a year. At the moment in the region, it's you re-engineer or backwards. You'd look at there's maybe 20 or 30 a year starting at the moment. So there's plenty happening, but we want 100.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Phil.
Councillor Rogers.
Yeah, I also had a question about the physical space element. I mean, there's kind of been like the biz dojos and digital nomads in the past, and I guess, did you have anything that you sort of took away from that in terms of what might not have worked for those models that we would have to change if we wanted a physical space model that does kind of have those agglomeration benefits going forward?
Yeah, the economic model's challenging for typically working space. Part of the reason is the turnover of these companies, etc. And then if you don't attach or fix supporting services around that, so if I think BizDojo, it was actually a great event, great space, had a couple of companies that I'm involved with there, but it was in the middle of nowhere and there was never any plan to build, hospitality stuff around it, serviced offices for lawyers, accountants, the sort of people that serve them. So it was very ad hoc. And again, it's fine, you might survive that way, but I just think we should be very deliberate about if our economic future of Wellington is tech startups and then whatever they become after that, then how do we put them in a place that's central, got services around it, and hospitality and the sort of places people want to go after work and all that. Don't know if I answered your question, but...
It kind of does, yeah. Can I ask one more? Yeah, it was around the, I guess, another point you had, which was around the funded internships. And I was wondering, with, I guess, when Callaghan Innovation was disestablished and those grants moved towards sort of the MB R&D student grants, whether you think there's kind of space in the council, instead of providing that funding itself, advocating for those, I guess, more tax-based incentives that the government might be able to provide at a bigger scale.
Yeah, look, I think this was born out of, again, some of the Vision for Wellington stuff was when we did some of the young persons panels, the trick was that actually there's not that many internships being, not as many internships being offered in Wellington through central government as there was. Logically, you talk to most startups and they're happy to take on an internship. How that's funded, not sure. And I think to your point, probably needs to be looked at in tax breaks or different ways. But a lot of those startups are not going to get any benefit from a tax break at the moment. The first 5 years they're all running tax losses, right?
Fantastic. Thank you.
Awesome, gentlemen. I think that probably wraps us up for the day. Appreciate the fact that you guys are putting all this effort in to try and set up a ecosystem for us. I think, Law Wellingtonians basically coming up with the ideas is exactly what we need. So hopefully we can help set up a city where talent wants to be. And I look forward to working with you both. Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next we've got Mark Oldershaw from Wellington NZ, the CEO from Wellington NZ. Ian Tracy Bridges.
Kia ora koutou. Shall we just dive in? So, thank you. Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui o te ahi nei. I'm Tracy Bridges. I'm the chair of Wellington NZ and also Creative HQ, which two entities are going to speak to you today. Big shout out to the committee chair, who's the newest member of our boards. Delighted to have you and to have the opportunity to talk to this committee. Before we start, I'm just going to do a super quick overview of the work of our two entities, and then I'm going to hand to Mark, and then when you're ready, also to Catherine. I think it's easy sometimes to see the Regional Economic Development Agency as a bit of a behemoth, an entity that the City Council and the Regional Council give not insignificant funding to every year. But unlike the other CCOs in your portfolio, you can't walk in and see what we do the way you can at a zoo, the way you can at Zealandia, the way you can at the cable car. It sometimes feels, I think, sometimes to city councillors as our shareholders and owners, a little kind of hard to see in. The perspective I wanted to offer you before we sort of get into the slides and the detail is actually you can see what we do every day when you're in Wellington. If you go to WOW, then you can see what we do, because we have a role in funding that with the benefit of City Council funding. We have a role in helping them navigate the city. We have a role in making it sticky for them to stay here. We have a role in helping them market their incredible event. If you are going to a festival event this week, then that's what we've done. Again, we're not the festival, we're not the actors on the stage, but we've played a major role in making sure that that event happens here. If you saw the signs down on the south coast for the filming of Red Rocks Season 2, then you know what we do. If you saw the advent calendar before Christmas that unites a whole bunch of businesses and fires up opportunities for them, then you know what we do. If you heard that we got a massive funding boost from central government for tourism initiatives into Wellington, then you know what we do, because our teams are across all of that. If you've been to any of CHQ's FinTech or Climate Tech or other startups, then you know what we do. I'm sort of trying to paint a picture for you that we don't do all of those things, but we connect with so many players that are doing the amazing things that make this city such a vibrant and awesome place. And we are the funders or the supporters or the marketers or the navigators to make it sticky for them to stay here that make it happen. And yet we are not a tiny organisation, but we're also not huge. But the team that work with Mark and with Catherine are absolutely dedicated to the vibrancy that we're all committed to here. So that's probably enough for me now, and I will hand to you. Thank you.
Kia ora tātou team, Mark Oldershaw, Chief Executive, very proud Chief Executive of Wellington NZ. Thanks for the opportunity to do a quick presentation, pick up on some of the points that Tracy's covered. Also recognise the great work that Serge and Phil are doing as well, along with Creative HQ and others, to achieve what we are trying to achieve, which is to make Wellington a great place to live, invest and play and visit. So that's very much part of, I think, of our collective mandate. So look, what I want to cover today is again, and some of you might have seen some of this before, but a pretty high level overview of who we are and what we do. Just touch on some of those impacts in a wee bit more detail than what Tracy's just gone through, but I think it picks up some of those themes as well. I think look through expectations, our funding model, and there's always an opportunity to look at opportunities as we go ahead as a city and as an organisation as well. So opportunities to sort of touch on some of those. This is very much our strategy on a page. Very compact in terms of where our sort of focus areas are, but very much based on jobs and growth. Our mandate as Economic Development Agency, as Regional Tourism Agency, is very much focused on jobs and growth. How we achieve that is through three PO or pillars, and I hope those PO are reasonably familiar to you. Placemaking, i.e. ensuring that Wellington is a place that people want to be and live in and visit. Collaboration and engagement, that touches on quite a bit of what Tracy's just talked through as well, and specifically around jobs for the future. How we achieve those is through four rocks. Or four priorities, and these are priorities that are being agreed amongst ourselves, including Wellington City Council, in terms of where our mandate should be. Events is a critical component of economic success for the region and for the city. That's major events, that's the big concerts at the stadiums, that's the Nick Caves, that's the Festival of the Arts that we've got going at the moment. Performance events that we see at our venues most days of the week, and business events as well in terms of conferences. Visitor economy is our tourism and destination piece, a really critical component to economic impact. Our regional economic development plan that we do in conjunction with our regional shareholders, and we've specifically identified two industry sectors there, screen and technology, and our colleagues at Creative HQ will soon cover the technology strategy as well. Look, always keen to feature some highlight stats. But again, these are stats that we're really proud of, and I hope we're proud of the city as a city as well. $210 million of direct economic impact over the last financial year through work that Wellington NZ has done, and that's very much along the lines of what Tracy's talked about. That's the Wales of the world. That's the ultra music festivals that are coming up next month. That's the New Zealand Festival of Arts that's starting this week. That's I don't know if you saw the post this morning, but there was a wraparound there, or bringing Broadway to Wellington, and that's the 6 significant musical theatre events that we've got in Wellington this year as well. All contribute to that $210 million. $110 million of that is from out of region expense, and again, that's a significant stat that we just need to continue to grow on, but that's very much built around tourism and events. 399 businesses we've impacted through the CIT, City in Transition program. Again, possibly a program that flies under the radar somewhat, but 94% satisfaction from those businesses that we've impacted in those regions, I think, is a really critical component of ensuring that the city remains vibrant. And almost $500 million in spend through our film and television sector as well within the region. In terms of our shareholder expectations, again, as we said, a lot of that's built around jobs and growth, and as we head into our statement of intent, letter of expectation finalising for the coming year, again, you've asked us very much to focus on that growing jobs and increasing spend within the region. And so much of our activities rests on that. There are some specific expectations that you've also asked us to consider around Tākina Town Hall, some of our venue operations, as well as the Regional Economic Development Plan. Some of those areas of expectations do have nuances, and I know I've spoken to a number of you about this, and there are variants around some of these as well. How we balance our obligations of the city versus the region, where we have two shareholders with quite distinct at sometimes, but also at other times quite aligned outcomes, and where our short-term hits of economic impact hit the city versus some of those longer-term investment components, and how we, again, ensure that we get that balance right from an investment perspective. We're funded through those expectations through core funding, through our shareholders, Wellington City Council core funding and Greater Wellington Regional Council core funding, our two core shareholders. That core funding covers things like events, so our major events, our performance events, destination, marketing and communications, as well as operating components of that. The Greater Wellington Regional Council core funding covers delivery of the Regional Economic Development Plan. We do have other funding components of that as well. Destination Wellington Fund. That's a contestable fund that we apply for annually, and that really relates to specific projects to support the economic wellbeing strategy, and things that sit under that are the tech strategy, the tech component that we provide to CHQ, and again CHQ will be talking about that soon. A lot of the work we do in the screen attraction area as well as business events, and our cruise strategy and our CRT strategy sit under that as well. You may be familiar with the City Growth Fund. That's not a grant. It's essentially accumulated reserves that allows us to access funding for significant events that don't sit within a financial year. A lot of those are sporting events. Classic regional recent examples have been FIFA Women's World Cup, again a significant contributor to Wellington, and the Rugby World Cup when that was there as well. As a new committee, we look forward to working with you, Carl, and your team. It's really critical that we do, and we continue to remain close in terms of our operations. A couple of things that I would encourage some consideration around. One, I guess, is how we become a wee bit more strategic in our funding, and I'm specifically talking about the DW funding. It's a contestable fund that we apply for every year, but our ability to think about that as more of a long-term funding or a 2 to 3 year application process will allow much more certainty within the operations that we do, rather than focusing on a financial year to financial year system. So I think that would provide a lot more certainty to our market from an economic development perspective. I do also just highlight the funding that has gone into the CIT, City and Transition work as well. That work is coming to an end, as many of you know, but the support that has been given to businesses in the CBD in terms of ensuring that the CBD is fresh and revitalised, in terms of the work we're doing with small business operators, is significant. And if there is an opportunity for this committee or other committees to consider how some of that funding could continue on a wider scale across some of our businesses, I think would be absolutely advantageous. Carl, thank you for the opportunity, and very happy to open up to questions.
Excellent. We'll start with Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. I just want to point out that you did talk about stakeholder expectations and referred to this council, but we're here as elected representatives of ratepayers, commercial and residential, and it's the commercial ratepayers that are paying a significant amount of money
Correct.
to fund Wellington NZ, and they're Wellington City, and so they're saying, what are we seeing for this? And it's not just the businesses that are in the downtown levy who pay the levy and the commercial rate,
Sure.
but also our businesses in the suburbs as well, who are paying commercial rate, which are funding most of this. So what I'd like to see is, how do you factor that in? Because whilst we may have our own views, we are here for the ratepayers. And So I just thought it was also interesting that you talked about, we talked about the ecosystem and the whole funding envelope. And again, we, as you know, the council's got its funding challenges.
Agreed.
And realizing is how can we together, even if we've got lots of jam jars around, how do we get the most effective use when everyone's having to take basically pretty much a haircut, and our commercial ratepayers are saying, we want to see the differential change. We want to see you start to reduce it. So that starts meaning more gets put onto potentially residential ratepayers. And so, so look, I just really posing those questions to you from a funding challenge that we all have.
Yeah. No, and thank you, Diane. Really, really good questions and both very valid questions. Look, in hindsight, my reference to stakeholders should have been shareholders rather than stakeholders, and happy to correct. Excuse me, happy to correct that. But Wellington City Council and councillors are very much partners in this program as well. So in that respect, I think we continue to see you as stakeholders, but you are essentially shareholders. And look, the funding challenges are significant. We're very well aware of those. You've challenged us in the letter of expectation to consider how we would look at more than the CBD, i.e. some of our suburban opportunities. We've got a chance to address that with you in our statement of intent, which is due by the end of this week. But they are considerations that we will continue to work with the council on. And I think it's increasingly as we look at some of these fiscal challenges, it's looking at smart partnerships as well. Who's best to pick up particular activities as well, I think.
Thank you.
So I've got a quick question. So my understanding is that Wellington City Council on the core funding doesn't supply any funds for business development. In that we specify what we want that money spent on, and it seems to be more event-based. Is that correct?
Yeah, I guess ultimately it depends on how you define business development.
Okay, so let's take it away from, creating jobs and all these sort of things. It seems at the moment that a lot of the pot is put into events and things like that, probably by direction from us, to be fair, while most people would look at the economic development side of things as being stimulating business on a long-term basis.
Yep.
But my understanding is we're not necessarily giving you funds to actually achieve that, and most of that money comes out of the Wellington Regional Council. Is that correct, or have I got this wrong?
Yeah, no, that is correct. And we received, well, it is partly correct, I guess. We also received additional pots of money from government, MB funding, for example, in terms of the Regional Business Programs Partners Program. Undoubtedly, from an economic impact, though, the biggest impact on Wellington from a short-term perspective is events and tourism areas. So, and we've seen that time and time again in terms of our economic analysis. So from that perspective, there is a significant return on investment, and we've seen that at $8 return for every dollar invested in Wellington NZ. But the business partnership stuff also works through the Destination Wellington Fund. So Wellington is a contributor in terms of ensuring that we provide business support to regions, to operators within the Wellington City.
Councillor Foon?
I've got 3, Chair. Is that capable? Great. Thank you, Mark and Tracy. Just Serge just talked about focus, and I guess I'm conscious that in our own economic wellbeing strategy we've had 5 or 6 PO, and then in the regional development plan it's got a wider scope or a breadth. If I said to you, how and where would you focus to grow jobs and spend, what would you do?
Yeah. Look, again, that's a really good question, Laurie. I mean, we are the tech sector is a sector that we've identified, along with the screen sector, as being opportunities as a region. And I think, as Serge said, it's not aspiring to be national leaders. We already are national leaders in those areas. So, ensuring that we can continue to provide infrastructure and support and motivation for those businesses to establish themselves in Wellington is a really critical component of that.
Yep, great. Okay, thank you. Next question, just your comments on CIT, just that if you've been in touch with 399 businesses and you're feeling the benefits of that, from a business owner perspective, what are they experiencing by having Wellington NZ?
Yeah, look, again, a really good question, and we have a number of our staff members that are out, out and about every day, and some of that support is well, in fact, all of that support is tailored to individual businesses, but sometimes that might mean marketing support, that might mean mentoring in terms of sort of cash flow work and how businesses can best leverage their cash flows. There's opportunities in terms of promotional advertising and all those sorts of things as well. Business development and business support functions. Some of that is one-on-one, some of that is one-to-many, what we call one-to-some. And we do a lot of that work in conjunction with the Chamber. We do a lot of that work ourselves. We do a lot of that work in partnership with other providers as well, depending on what's best for that particular business.
Great. Okay, thank you. The last one was really, I think, just an observation with us having a plan or a strategy, and then the regional. Is that useful, having a more focused strategy for Wellington City, or would it be better if it was all melded into one?
Yeah,
or do you just quietly do that behind the scenes?
That's a really good question. Look, the Regional Economic Development Plan has identified 33 specific projects, and Wellington is certainly a part of that, and a really critical part of that. I think the two can sit side by side, so long as they don't fundamentally oppose each other. And I think if we're collectively focusing on jobs and spend, then I think that provides us collectively, when I mean us, the region and the city, with the focus areas that we need.
Councillor Chung.
Great, thanks very much, Tracy. And in fact, your presentation, your introduction there was perfect for what I actually need, because people were asking me this all the time. And Mark, thank you very much for your recent invitation, much appreciated. I'd like to ask you, you mentioned about regional shareholders. Now, what is the expectation of Wellington NZ? Like, do they want you to have arrange functions or concerts or things in their region, or what is it they actually want, and how would you actually achieve these or achieve their desires?
Yeah, so look, that's very clearly set out in our process with council through your letter of expectation to us. So this year, as we're going through our draft letter of expectation, we've got 9 expectations that sit between City Council and our regional council, so our two shareholders. Again, as I said earlier, the majority of that's focused on jobs and spend. From our perspective, we continue to work with our stakeholders and our shareholders to ensure that we focus on the areas that provide the greatest impact and greatest economic return for both of those. So, we're just about to go through a process soon in terms of the 26-27 year. That'll be an opportunity to talk that through a wee bit more in terms of what that's going to look like from a city and regional perspective. But I think, from a board's perspective as well, I think there's a very clear focus on what's important for the city and what provides the greatest economic return to the city as well.
Okay.
And it's a mixture of all and above. And from an events perspective, we try to ensure that we've got a portfolio of events that is open all year round, and we're increasingly moving our tourism strategy to that as well. So we don't just have a summer campaign and a winter campaign. We have a Wellington is open all year campaign. And I think you'll see that, and I hope you do see that reflected in our tourism and event strategies as well.
Great. Tom, can I have a follow-up? Thanks. Okay. When you speak to different organisations about bringing an act here or a concert or something here, is a consideration for these organisations how Wellington actually looks like? Do they actually look at Wellington in a way? We're very concerned about how the city actually looks to people coming in here. Sure. So is that an important factor, and what do you actually do about that?
Yeah. Well, as Nicola said, it has significant impact on visitors, and our tourists and our cruise boats are in town at the moment, and all those sorts of things as well. So, from our perspective, we want to continue to ensure that Wellington's shining in its best light that it possibly can. We've got some exciting opportunities coming up with Tanaka Square opening, and our ability to collectively celebrate that as well, I think, is really, really important. From an events perspective, Ray, the attraction for Wellington, we've taken very much a strategic approach to focus on events again that provide good community balance, but also are appropriate for our venues as well. And we've talked a number of times around some of the limitations we have with our venues. But Wellington primarily, in the focus and the feedback that we get from our promoters, who are the ones that we deal with in terms of bringing events to Wellington or to New Zealand, is that Wellington's a really easy city to engage with, and that's essentially because it's a one-stop shop, and that's one of the advantages of I think of the work that Wellington NZ does in terms of the work we do across not only the promotional work but in terms of the major events, the venues. It can all be incorporated within a single conversation, rather than some cities where that becomes increasingly difficult if you're working across multiple parties as well.
That's great. Excellent. Thank you.
No problems.
Thank you very much, guys, for coming on in. Appreciate it, and hopefully we can get some good results going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now we've got Catherine Jones coming in from Creative HQ. In Column as well. Sorry, I should have said Catherine and crew.
I can bring a posse. Thank you for. Can you hear me okay? Sorry. Here we go. Okay, thank you for having us to your inaugural meeting. I'm Catherine Jones, the CEO of Creative HQ, and with me are three of my colleagues, Colin, and Brett. And we're here to talk about Wellington's tech sector strategy today. So why does Wellington need or have a tech sector strategy? Why tech? Well, New Zealand businesses spend up to $2.5 billion annually on digital platforms like Facebook. In Auckland alone, 1.3 million nights are booked each year through Airbnb. Each of these transactions made by New Zealanders and New Zealand businesses is money leaving our shores, going into the pockets of international companies. Globally, technology companies are now central to building resilient economies. The countries and cities within those countries that thrive are those who are producing these technology companies, not just being consumers of them. Tech is New Zealand's fastest growing export sector, generating 15 billion plus annually, and that number is rising. For Wellington to prosper long term, we must be part of that growth. And as we present this presentation to you, there will be lots of similar messages to that Serge and Phil presented to you earlier. The good news is that Wellington already has real traction in tech. Creative HQ have been around now for 23 years. And we're part of the council whānau. No other council in New Zealand has a Creative HQ, fun fact. And the companies that we have supported now total about $2 billion in valuation. The Wellington-specific companies that we have supported, $1.4 billion in total valuation. In addition to that, Our alumni have raised about $350 million in investment, and nearly 40,000 people have participated in our programs and events to date. When I talk about alumni, companies that have been through our programs are companies like Henry, Sharesies, Tuppy, Pledge Me, Marcello, Optimal Workshop, and more than 500 others. Significant number of companies that you do know, you have heard of, have been through our programs. It all starts with Creative HQ. Now, these great companies don't grow in isolation. These companies grow in strong, connected ecosystems. And Creative HQ exists not only to grow the companies, but to stimulate, strengthen, and sustain the ecosystem around them. And I can't stress enough the importance of having that ecosystem here in Wellington that's thriving. At Creative HQ, we subscribe to a pretty common international model which says to build these thriving ecosystems, you need to have intentional activity that spans what we call our 4 Cs. So first of all, we need an entrepreneurial culture here in Wellington, and Phil and Serge talked a little bit about this before. We need to nurture a city-wide culture of entrepreneurship. Creative HQ is a significant part of that. We're a catalyst for that, but there's a whole lot of other players in our ecosystem also. We have a significant role to play in connecting founders to investment, the C that we call capital, and connections, so linking all the various players in our ecosystem here in Wellington together. So entrepreneurs, investors, the public sector, corporates, academia, these are all key players in a thriving entrepreneurial ecosystem. And our 4th C is capability. We need to build the skills across our founders and their support network so that A, we have people who are capable of leading these high growth companies, and B, we have employees who they're able to employ. Now, recently, your very own Matt Prosser said a term that's become a bit sticky at Creative HQ. He said, if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority, and we subscribe to that wholeheartedly at Creative HQ, which is why we focus on 4 particular verticals that we believe can really shape Wellington's business identity moving forward. Those are fintech, climate tech, creative tech, and civic tech, which is sometimes called GovTech, that last one. And first and foremost, I want to be really clear that Creative HQ exists to serve Wellington. And so having verticals to focus on, to prioritise as a city that we can all get behind and say, Wellington is the fintech capital of New Zealand. Wellington is the climate tech capital of New Zealand, we think is really, really important. But building these verticals takes time and it takes intention. This is not short-term sugar hit play, right? If we want Wellington to truly be a startup and scale-up city, a city of tech, then we need to ensure that the infrastructure that supports it is strong. And Creative HQ, your very own Creative HQ, is uniquely placed to do this, and we want to do it working closely with Council. I just want to do a little deep dive into fintech. So fintech right now, some of you know this, is New Zealand's largest sub-tech sector. It's currently valued at $2.6 billion. 8 years after graduating from Creative HQ's program, fintech are naming our stadium. I know we're all really proud of that. Our railway station and bus backs right now are covered in Sharesies pink. Almost a quarter of New Zealand is now subscribed to the Sharesies platform. What some of you might not know yet is that Revolut, which is a $75 billion global company, is about to set up in Wellington. They're a fintech. They've picked Wellington as their New Zealand headquarters, and they're moving in a couple of months' time. And New Zealand's annual fintech hui, which has historically been held in Auckland, has now shifted its location of its annual conference here to Wellington. Wellington is right now being talked about as New Zealand's fintech capital. But these results come almost a decade after running our first fintech program. We've now run 5 fintech programs in total. What will drive further growth for our city now in the tech sector is further investment. Further investment is needed, and we've pulled together some comparables from around the world which we thought might be really interesting to you. Cities around the world that have characteristics, whether that's population size or other characteristics that are similar to Wellington. Estonia, you will see there, for example, has a population of just under $500,000, and their startup ecosystem value is now $32 billion. They've invested a lot in their tech sector. I'll pass over to Colin now, who leads the tech sector strategy work for Wellington, and he's going to do a deeper dive on that for you.
The Wellington Tech Sector Strategy has 4 strategic goals, and these goals are to grow startups into scale-ups and bring more jobs, investment and prosperity for our region. So the 4 goals are supporting to scale. The idea here is to create lots more startups and over time support them to grow until eventually we'll have more Henrys, Sharesies, First AML, Trade Me and so on. Capital access. To grow, a startup needs capital, needs to understand about capital and how to access it, but also that's from whether you're a startup, a scale-up, or an investor as well. The third part is talent, attraction, activation. To grow great companies, you need great people, so you have to attract them to be in our city and want to work here, but also activate the people we already have in our city and region. And fourthly, it's about championing equity in tech. More female, more Maori, more Pacific are working in these tech companies. Now, the next slide is a lot of numbers of what we're actually doing, but just using the picture that you're all looking at here, I'll tell you a few quick stories. One is capital. We delivered this event last November. There was 297 people, to be very specific, at the event. The morning was about startups, scale-ups, and investors, 9 workshops, 3 parallel sessions about educating and supporting those folks in those areas, from people who've been there, done it before, investment companies like Movac, Icehouse, and so on. The afternoon, working with Movac and Surge as well, we did a growth jam, which is 6 leadership sessions from people, again, who've built companies, talking to a room of people who are doing that right now. And finally, in the evening, working with Angel HQ, we had a pitch event where they had 6 companies who are looking for active investment present to the room, bringing 3 entities together to deliver one great output for the city. A couple other ones, working in the cloud. Every 2 years, we bring an event together which brings almost 1,000 16, 17, 18-year-olds to see what a future in tech could be for them. It's an amazing event, and we continue to do it, and that's the bottom left picture. And one last one, top right, with all the confetti, is from the recent FinTech Accelerator launch. That was the 2nd or 3rd week in January. We were busy at it straight away. There's 14 teams in there, 6 from Wellington, and they will be celebrating the end of their program in April at the FinTech Festival. On this next slide is how we do activities across well, on the next slide would be a lot of activities we're doing across each, there it is. But what things we have coming up include the FinTech Hui coming to Wellington after 3 years in Auckland. That'll be a 1.5-day event. We have the FinTech Festival in April. In July, we'll have a 1.5 day for a Climate Tech Festival, which will be the biggest science and startup event for climate events, energy companies in New Zealand. And then later on, we also working on new programs for creative tech and a new scale-up program as well to help some of these companies in Wellington to go and accelerate to even better things. All of this work is about layering the infrastructure that cements Wellington's identity as a tech city. And the place, as Carl said right at the start of this, where talent lives and works. Now, on the last slide there, you will see how can you help us and help the city? Well, it's about the whole conversation so far today is about recognizing that these are catalysts. The tech sector is a catalyst for the growth of our city now and into the future. What it needs is investment, but it also needs certainty. And we can have your help, obviously, by promoting the tech sector stories that are pouring out of our city, participating in events, which you already do. And for instance, I think Carl was at that January launch of the FinTech. I know Councillor McNulty has adopted a startup. Count is one of the companies from Wellington going through the FinTech Accelerator. And of course, you can always talk to any of us about any of the events going on. We're connected across the ecosystem, and we're happy to help. Katrin.
Yeah, I think the only other one that Colin's crossed over there, of course, is invest in the sector. Serge and Phil talked to you about their vision for 100 companies. Creative HQ can help 100 early stage companies grow, no problem. It requires funding and investment to be able to do that. We're pretty good at hustling for money outside of council. when you look at funding we've received from council over the last 8 years, and this isn't a gripe, by the way, it's just a fact. I think it's topped at 6% of our total funding. Some years it's been 0% of our total funding. So we're pretty good at getting funding from elsewhere. But when you look at those international examples that I put up, that we could compare ourselves to and aspire to be like, they all have significant local government investment in this ecosystem building part of their work. The other thing to think about is at the moment the time is right to invest more. Our programs are 5 to 6 times oversubscribed generally. We've just taken applications for our next climate tech program. We'll take 15 teams into that. We've had 67 credible applicants for that, 67 companies who want to grow, and about half of those are Wellington companies. I also just challenge you to think about the cost of not investing. Other cities are going to invest, and Auckland's investing a lot right now. Christchurch is investing a lot. We really want Wellington to be a key player in the national ecosystem here in New Zealand. We would love to take your questions.
Excellent. Well, Councillor Calvert.
Okay. Look, I was pleased you showed some comparisons of different cities, because like Auckland pay a lot. Sorry, I'm going to keep on the finance part. Pay a lot less rates. Their ratepayers pay a lot less rates than, in comparison, Wellingtonians do. So we have to think about, you talk about an ecosystem, we have to think of broader ecosystem. One of the things is that, and I've heard some commentary about how could Creative HQ in helping these startups take some basically shares in them or something, so that, that if they do take off, there is some funding that can be reinvested into other things. So I'm interested to understand how that could work, or whether you've considered that.
Thanks for the question. So I've been with Creative HQ for over a decade, and we have done that. In fact, we had shares in Henry and Sharesies. We did cash those in when they went in their first round, because they needed some of that equity to be able to bring in other local investors. So that did help us with programming, and over the years that has helped us with programming. We aren't doing that right now, because we're actually partnering with other investors, and we're partnering with the local ecosystem to make sure that that investment is available for the investors. We've decided that our place is to actually run the programs and make the room for the investors to invest in the programs. What we never found was, and I'll go back to Creative HQ was started on the premise of what you just said. How about we take equity and we turn that into refunding the program? There's been one program in the entire world that's made that successful. That's Y Combinator. That's the program that created Airbnb and Box and so many other. Nobody in the world, no program in the world has been able to make that equation work. So we stopped doing it ourselves as well.
Okay. And just one question. You don't have to provide me now, but I have asked this before of Wellington and Z, because you are a wholly owned subsidiary, and there's different forms that you could take, not just a subsidiary of Wellington and Z, but we don't get to visit the accounts. So we don't. You're a black box to us.
Oh, our accounts are on our website.
I know. I've tried to interpret them, and they're quite. It's not easy when I'm looking for the benefits coming back through. So I'd be really interested to understand in a better way what funding you're getting, what funding, and where are the profits and losses going, basically. To have a better view of that would be really helpful.
Sure, we'll take that away, Diane. Thank you.
Councillor Chung.
Thanks very much. I have a similar sort of question as Councillor Calvert. I find that there's a lot of investors available who are looking for somewhere to put their money apart from in the bank, because the banks are offering so low interest rates. So is it feasible for us as council, and again, I'm looking at the figures that you actually use for the other cities and how much they're investing. You'll know, of course, that Wellington City Council doesn't have a lot of money to spare, but is there some way that we can actually endorse, or we can actually set up a system to actually encourage these investors to maybe pull their money into something to invest in these organisations? Is there some way that you can think of that we could actually do that?
Yeah, I mean, I like your thinking on that. There are some VCs, of course, and angel associations. Wellington has an angel association that private investors can go along and invest in these companies. They have regular pitch nights, which our companies pitch in. For VCs, you have to qualify. There are laws and regulations around who qualifies as an investor for those. And Icehouse Ventures up in Auckland have done a lot of work to try and broaden that scope so that more and more people become eligible for that. But for people who aren't, then angel associations can be a good place to start investing.
Great.
And we have that ecosystem vibrant here in Wellington.
Great. Thanks.
Little.
Just on that, the small issue of not being a registered financial advisor too. So we're not going to be giving financial and investment advice to folks unless we're registered, and I don't think we are. Look, really appreciate your presentation and all the presenters who've come today. Just for Creative HQ, and we've met, and I, big supporter of what you do. What difference would an additional $1 million make to your funding for what you could do?
A huge difference. So we currently operate on $4 million worth of funding is what we need to run our business. It's actually not a lot. And I think Brett's just been through our impact numbers, but I think for every dollar that's been invested in our programs, when you look at valuation of the companies that's resulted, I think it's about 150 times return on investment dollars invested into us. So it does two things. It will enable us to put more companies through our programs. But alongside that, I think it's about certainty of that funding enduring. So, do we get that $1 million for 1 year, or can we see visibility of that $1 million for 5 years because you're going to use it differently? But it will enable us to spend less time going out and hustling for money and more time focused on building more companies.
Councillor Finn?
Yeah, just two quick questions. I noticed in your goal, or in your big, hairy, audacious vision goal, you've got to be a company to bring in $3 billion. I think I was just trying to find it for Wellington City. Is that a goal? As a vision statement, how does that align with other sectors around the world in the same area? Like, I guess is that a good one to get up, want to rush out of bed in the morning to go to work for?
That's a great question. It's actually fairly conservative. So we did a study, and we're going to be doing more through the tech sector strategy of really measuring the value in a detailed way of the startup ecosystem. It's one of the initiatives in the tech sector. Right now, we put the value of the entire startup ecosystem in Wellington at about $2.4 billion. So we're talking, from getting from 2.4 to 3 is a conservative view. If you look at those other cities, so we talked about Estonia, same size city, theirs is at about 40 billion in value. We looked at Waterloo just lately. We had a presentation on them recently. They're a 700,000 person city. Theirs is about 70 billion in value. So there's a lot more we could do. But if you think about even the jump between 2.4 and 3 billion is probably another 500 jobs in the city. So the economic value of that, that helps more companies that are getting to scale. That means that more companies are giving back, and it's a start. It really is a start. So we wanted to set a conservative estimate. If we can get to 10, then we're really talking.
Yeah.
But that's, and to Serge's challenge, and I appreciate that challenge. If we want to do 100 startups a year, we'll get to 10.
Yeah.
But right now, realistically, we're at about 30.
Yeah.
30 to 40, yeah.
No, thank you. And the next question is with startup, culture happening in Christchurch and Auckland as well, what is it that Wellington has got that is a unique proposition to compete with our beautiful sister cities?
Kia ora, I'm the other Irish guy, Colin, I'm the other part of the island. It's a great question. That's an important question as well, because as you travel around the country and you see the unique value propositions that each region and city can offer, where does Wellington sit in that? And I think this is what Catherine mentioned before, the difference between a short sugar hit and a long-term play. What is Wellington's identity? In 10, 15 years' time, what is our business identity going to be? What is not startup and scale up, our business identity? And so the 4 verticals that we've talked about, fintech, clean tech, creative tech, and GovTech, they're Wellington. They're very Wellington specific. They reek of Wellington. So what do we offer? We offer that. We're close to government. We live in a beautiful environment. We are the fintech capital already, and we're the creative capital. Let's double down on that and build our identity in that. So that's what we offer.
Councillor Ruwiti.
Ngā mihi, Chair. Ngā mihi, team. You've alluded, Catherine, to Sharesies being on billboards, stations, on buses. I also note that people like Rod Jury have invested in cycling infrastructure and things. And congratulations also on Henry investing into the stadium. Do you have anything in your programs that encourages these successes to reinvest into the Wellington community outside of the sector? And is it something that we can expect more of in the short term?
Yeah, I mean, look, one of the truly joyful things about the sector is it's really a sector of what I call extending the ladder back down. When you nurture these companies at their earliest stage of inception, when they need the help the most, the first 1,000 days that Serge and Phil were referring to, you build up a lot of goodwill. And so what we have in our program is some of the best entrepreneurs in New Zealand now, the 3 EOs from Sharesies, Henry, James from Henry. We've got Jamie Beaton, who's an Aucklander, by the way, that spends most of his time in New York, but feels very passionate that Wellington and the rest of New Zealand should be playing a leading role in this tech sector. It shouldn't all go to Auckland. We've got Brian West, who's Christchurch-based, but very big on clean tech, and Wellington's the only place that fills her cup on clean tech. You know, they've come on board as brand ambassadors. They spend time with our startup founders. We have people graduating from the program saying, how can I now help the next cohort? And so there's just a very much a give-back culture that's built in, and it's because, just like a human, they are nurtured so well at the start of their career.
And one last question, Councillor Rogers.
Yeah, I guess mine was kind of broadly asking questions about the tech sector strategy, if that's okay, and kind of how it fits into the Wellington NZ piece, because it's kind of something they've got you to help create. I just wonder, with a specific focus within Creative HQ of the startup sort of space, does that mean that we kind of lose some of that focus and perhaps, I guess, as Councillor Calvert was saying, the scale-ups or even established businesses that might be able to foster people who are coming into the industry and looking for a job, but might not necessarily be looking at the innovation space per se?
Want me to? Yeah. Yeah. Look, I don't know if this exactly answers the question, but I think it's important to have the context. When Creative HQ started out 23 years ago, our core singular focus was startups, right? And as the ecosystem in Wellington has matured, we've understood that there's other elements that need to be nurtured. We started doing what we call pre-accelerator programs. These are people just with an idea, helping them turn that idea, validate that idea into, could this be a viable business? So we call that a pre-accelerator program at Creative HQ. We run those. Our latest offering is we're introducing a scale-up program for people who want to, scale up beyond that. And so the breadth of work that we're doing across the life cycle of these companies broadens as the ecosystem here in Wellington has matured. But in addition to that, when you go back to those 4 C's of ecosystem and the talent building and capability, it's really important that academic institutions, that public and private sector, that all of these organisations are developing what we call an innovation culture. So, they understand that there is this way of thinking, way of being, way of working, that if they want they're curious about that and they want to be a part of that, then there's a place that they can come. But also that our more traditional organisations, the large corporates, the large government agencies, that they have a culture of innovation built within them as well, so that they can be leading in their own fields.
Yeah. Could I ask it in a slightly different phrased way? I guess the context that I'm thinking about is, across Victoria University, Massey, all of the institutions that we have here, we're training circa 300 students and pumping them out into the world every single year.
Yeah.
And I find an increasing number of those people, despite being ingrained in Wellington culture and absolutely loving it here, going to places elsewhere where there are internships available. And I'm thinking about the restructure that's currently going on within Xero to consolidate across time zones, and they're choosing to withdraw investment in places like Wellington. So kind of outside of the focus of generating new institutions that will create new pathways, new jobs, what are we sort of doing in the space of recognising that people are coming here, they're studying here, and we want to keep them in Wellington?
Do you want to?
I think being connected across the ecosystem is the starting point of that. When I think of Vic Uni, the first thing I think about Vic Uni is the atom, the entrepreneurial space that is there. They just ran something called the Fission Project, which finished up about 2 weeks ago. 16 entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs from there, but running onto like an 8-week program as well. We were able to support them as were others in the ecosystem, catching us on the board of Atom. So was Surge. Like, we're really a joined up ecosystem, but that's just one minutiae thing. As you say, it's actually pointing out opportunities where folks like who were there can go on. So like there's people in there who could absolutely be a part of the creative tech program that's upcoming. There's 2 different other people in there who definitely should be part of startup coaching, Startup Aotearoa. And it's going on, and then connecting them to the right places. The second part of that is then talent, the organizations in our city, and as you talked about, like grad roles and the age of AI, there is issues there as well to be addressed and to think about as well. But there's also amazing organizations in our city, across the country, who are doing great work in this. Summer of Tech, for instance, jumps to mind straight away as well. It's a complex answer, or a complex question. It takes a complex answer, and it takes a lot of people. As I keep saying these days, it takes a city to build an ecosystem. Yeah.
I think as Serge said earlier on, the more startups you have, the more scale-ups you end up with, and obviously there is a limited amount of funds that we have available to help. So therefore you have to look at where is your best hit for the cash, and then as companies progress, I'm assuming that they need less and less help, as Serge said earlier as well. So therefore they do create those jobs maybe through that. Sorry, there is one last question from Councillor Abdul-Rum.
Kia ora, Tim. And you just said, how we can help, recognizing, investing, promote participation. What do you envision when you say promoting? I understand investing, the mayor asked you about if we give you this much money, what you do. But what do you envision when you say promoting the tech sector stories, council, what that looks like? And what the participation, is that just councillors and council coming to the events? And just if you can just go exactly what you mean on those points.
So from what I see going about my day-to-day life in Wellington is that companies that are thriving give us all a reason to be really proud. Your average Wellingtonian, a reason to be proud. We're all proud that the stadium is about to be named after a local company. Local people want local heroes. And Creative HQ, I think, for the size of our organisation, punches above our weight in terms of our storytelling and trying to get out stories of the great companies that already exist in Wellington and the new companies that are growing, and why we should all know about them and why we should all be proud of them, why we should all use them as a source of inspiration for our own, aspirations. But we're limited in size, so the more people that we have within our ecosystem who are telling those stories alongside us, then the more people in Wellington who will know about the great companies that exist here. Deputy Mayor McNulty is proving to be an exemplar for us in this respect. He's taken on talking to some of our companies and sharing their stories, and he has a far bigger social media reach than I do. So if we can all, it's similar to Surgeon Phil's asked to adopt a company. If we could all take an interest in these companies and share the stories of them, if the council engine is able to somehow tell the stories of the great companies that we've got here, then more Wellingtonians will be aware of the activity we've got here, and it's a source of pride for us all, feeling positive about our city.
Thank you very much, guys. I've got to say, I've been to a few of the events now, and I'm blown away by the positivity, energy and buzz that goes with them. I think, as you say, the key is that we are a great tech city. We probably don't celebrate it quite enough, and that seems to be the feedback I get from quite a few people, is that I think that's most of your ask, is that we as a city acknowledge and respect the fact that tech is such an important part of our city, and we start promoting it, because, success breeds success. Thank you very much. I've probably gone well over time, but it is my first time as a chair, so I'm allowed to. So thank you. Awesome.
Thank you.
Alrighty, we're now moving into general business eventually. So we're going to invite Melissa Davey to come along and give us an update, please.
Kia ora, councillors. There are a number of papers to introduce, but I'll start with the first one. I'll take this as read. This is economic development and the role of Wellington City Council. The purpose of this paper is to really give elected members an understanding of where Wellington City Council can play a role in economic development for the city. Primarily, our role is as a funder, an enabler, and a strategic partner. We provide $18 million in economic funding to Wellington NZ, in economic funding via Wellington NZ's operating grant, Te Papa, support for Te Papa, the City Growth Fund and Destination Wellington to support tourism events and direct economic development, such as supporting the tech and screen sectors. Just noting that our investment, Wellington City's investment in tech and screen has increased by 64% in the last 5 years. Over the last 4 years, that's approximately $3.27 million. And I'd also just like to note that Capital, which Creative HQ have just spoken about, as well as the FinTech Hui, have also received Destination Wellington funding. Our funding, the way that we operate our funding allows us to be agile and put support where it is needed. So the City in Transition program that Mark Oldershaw spoke about earlier, that allows us to be agile and refocus efforts. So for example, we are putting in business support via Wellington NZ over the next few weeks around the South Coast to support the Moa Point issue over there. I'll take the paper as read, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
And we have a couple. Councillor Foon.
Just quickly, can I just clarify the Te Papa annual grant? Did we reduce that last LTP?
Yes, we did reduce it. It was over 2 million. I can't remember exactly how much we reduced it by. We reduced Wellington NZ's funding through the last LTP by 500,000, and we reduced, I think it used to be 2.2 or 2.3 million for Te Papa, so it was a level of reduction.
Great. And just to follow that up, do we have a measurable idea of the return, like return on investment through the?
Well, we do a full through the last. Yes, there is an economic impact report. I would need to dig it out. It is for all of Te Papa's kind of exhibition content. To understand that, what we would probably need to do as part of the next LTP is understand it. It's directed to their summer exhibition.
Yes.
So at the moment you've got Breathe, and it's supported a whole range of things over the years. So we would need to look at that, and there is, as part of our rates review that we're doing for the next LTP, we're looking at the downtown targeted rate in particular, because 70% of Wellington NZ's funding, 70% of that Te Papa funding is from the downtown targeted rate, to look at if that targeted rate is getting the benefit for those businesses that are paying for that rate. So that will help give us that.
Right. And then just the second question completely different. Just the venues, does that break even? Do we have an idea of how that...
Yes, we do, and we'll be bringing, I think in April, doing a workshop about the venues model. We recently did a piece of work with a financial consultant that looked at the total cost of venues. So we do not give an operating grant to Wellington NZ to operate the venues. So their commercial activity and their activity that they drive through the venues needs to wash its own face.
Yep.
And then there are some depreciation costs and insurance costs that the council covers, but no operating costs.
Yeah, thank you. That's good.
Councillor Durham.
Kia ora whanau. When it comes to those fundings, council is enabling and at strategic level. Delivery is Wellington NZ, but we are the council is accountable to the community and the ratepayers and the businesses. So my question to you is just how comfortable are we when it comes to that delivery to businesses in the suburb, and how can we improve in some areas, because it seems they have some concerns, and is that a funding issue, how that can be improved for businesses in the suburb, not only the central city?
Yeah, I think probably the best mechanisms that we've got around the value is through Wellington NZ's KPI, so that $210 million economic impact figure, to understand that we're getting that value from investment. We also look specifically about major event funding impact, visitor impact, and there are separate KPIs around the economic development activity. So yes, I think hand on heart we can say that the investments we're making are getting a strong return on investment. I think the suburban businesses is probably another question mark. Could we doing a better story to tell what impact we're having in those areas? I think at the moment what we're looking at is we can't be all things to all people. We have to be targeted. So that focus largely is on the central city. I think that's fair to say, because with a strong central city, you will have a strong region. That's our economic strategic approach, if you like. But if there is, I don't think we've ever looked at specific, for example, return on investment for suburban businesses. Yeah.
So when you look at the Creative HQ's briefing or submission, you can see that they have requested beyond investment, and who's picking those requests and how that can be delivered, the support and the other things they mentioned there. Is that just something that going to be left for councillors, and if I'm just active, or whoever is active like deputy mayor, they can pick it and do some stuff, or is there something that the council can do in picking those things in more deliverable ways?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Via Wellington, so it's important to notice that Creative HQ is part of Wellington NZ, so what you have asked for is the current statement of expectations, is asking Wellington NZ, tell us what you think, knowing this current context that we're in, tell us where we're best to invest or where you're best to focus on, and how tech and how Creative HQ is part of that. So we do rely on Wellington NZ to look at that strategically and to make their recommendations. At the moment, through Destination Wellington, through Destination Wellington, which is $1.8 million, that is a contestable fund, but only for Wellington NZ. So they look at their range, they look at their strategy and their range of activity, and they then prioritise on what needs funding based on the jobs and spend that can stimulate, with tech as part of that. So this year, for example, that tech strategy portion of it is about 400,000 of that $1.8 million.
Cool. One more question, last one. Cool. When it comes to developing those strategies that enable Wellington NZ for the delivery, the council is developing them. Is that in collaboration with Wellington NZ with their input, or do they have their own strategy on how to deliver the strategy itself, or how that strategy works for them?
So in collaboration, the economic wellbeing strategy was a co-design strategy with Wellington NZ and other members of the community and business community, and then that's the high-level strategic direction, and when it gets down to how that is applied and focused, Wellington NZ's own strategic process covers that. I think there's a separate paper that we talk about the strategic approach, and maybe Mel, you can go into more detail when we get to that paper.
Do we actually fund Wellington NZ for any business development in the suburbs?
We don't target it to the suburbs. So the pure economic development fund you talked about before, that's Destination Wellington, that $1.8 million on top of the core tourism and major events grant funding. That is all about investment attraction and growth. There's no specific program that looks at suburban business growth. It's just part of the overall strategic approach. Probably the BID program is the program that we use with how we enable, even though that's invested in by the businesses themselves, to support that. But I would say there are lots of businesses in suburbs that Wellington NZ supports. I'll use the example of Floating Rock, for example, which is a screen business in Kilburnie, is a business that gets direct advice and support from Wellington NZ.
Councillor Calvert?
Yeah, look, I know even some of the suburban businesses, when Wellington NZ is supporting things like WOW, are often looking to participate in the marketing and do find it difficult. So because there's less focus on the suburban areas, but they all add to the picture. I'm really interested in the funding. We currently invest $80 million in economic development activities, but that's the external partners. There's no mention of the council activities, even like your own team. The economic team, what are we are investing. So I'm just wondering why we haven't got that included.
It mentions it in the paper and just in terms of the number of FTE, but there's no operating, there is no operating budget for that team. It is just a team of 4 FTE plus Mel, but happy to...
Yeah. Look, I just think we need to think about what we are putting in as an organisation internally.
Oh, you mean from a total quantum point of view? Sure.
Yeah. Just so we've got, because the other thing is out of the downtown levy targeted rate, and what is not in here is funding goes towards Carter Observatory, which I know is a bit odd because it's not even in the downtown area. So what's happening, and that doesn't seem to be included. So where is...
I think that's captured under the museums and galleries line as part of Experience Wellington.
So is it an economic development activity?
Well, that's why the downtown targeted rate review is part of the...
So that would be good if you could... note that. And whilst you talked about venues being separate, surely that is part, even internally, part of our investment into economic development, helping to support bringing events in. And I know you said we're not putting any operating funding in, but we are putting CapEx in. And so just again wondering whether we can have a broader picture of our true funding going into economic development.
Yeah, we'd probably just need to think about what the context is, because everything that we do in the city enables economic development. But we could look at some of the activity lines that sit
and how they're funded, because I think also, and I mentioned this in some of the questions, we're hearing from especially our commercial ratepayers outside of the CBD, that they're paying the commercial rate that's going into funding a lot of these activities and not seeing any sort of benefit. So I think and just final question, I'm just got clarity about, we put in 80% of funding to Wellington NZ. Greater Wellington put in funding, roughly $4 million. Now, sometimes Greater Wellington say our funding's going all to Creative HQ. Then we've got in the paper that the Greater Wellington funding is going into regional activities. And my understanding is Greater Wellington collected from all the other councils to put into this for wider regional activities. So can you clarify where is Greater Wellington's funding actually going?
So Greater Wellington's funding of around about that
4 million.
4 million comes from the targeted economic rate that is part of your regional rates bill that we all get. That funds the economic development activity part of Wellington NZ. So that covers their business growth and innovation activity, and out of that comes Creative HQ. I mean Wellington NZ can correct me, but I think it's about a quarter of that total Greater Wellington funding goes to Creative HQ. There's a lot that needs to be done with that regional economic development funding, and that is reported through the new. I can't remember the new mayor's forum. I think is where Wellington NZ reports in terms of that.
So it would be good if we can
come to the table, maybe. Mark.
It would be good if we can get some clarity about where is Greater Wellington's funding going?
I'll follow up in an email around that exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah,
that's it. Thank
So one last question, Councillor Young.
I'm just interested. So in the paper, point 10, it talks about council's role as primarily strategic and enabling, creating the right conditions for economic activity. And Anna, you've just said that everything we do in the city enables economic development. And yet we have this incredibly high rating differential. And I'm just wondering whether, as council, we can actually say those things with a straight face when we've got a 3.7 times differential. Oh yeah, but for this sector, but I'm thinking for the whole of Wellington. No, I suppose in a way.
Probably not a question I can answer. I don't think.
In a way,
we might move on for that one. Okay, so I guess we're up to moving the motion, so I'll move the motion happily. Is there a seconder? Councillor Young. Thank you. Any debate? No? Excellent. We're getting somewhere now. Yeah, so straight to the vote then. Let's do it. Oh, yay, first vote passed. Excellent. Brilliant. We might just take a 5-minute recess so people can go to the loo, have a cup of coffee or something, chat to the people out back if they want to. So we'll see you back in 5, so 10 past, please. If you could come back on up, please.
Kia ora again. I am pleased to be introducing the paper, the noting paper around the Wellington tech strategy refresh. You've had a pretty thorough coverage of that in that presentation before from Creative HQ. Just to note that we will be taking forward the recommendations and the information in that strategy refresh. You've got a copy of that in your papers. We're going to be taking that forward into our next stage development of our economic development plan, which I'll get to shortly in the next paper. So I'll take the paper as read and happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Foon.
Yeah, thanks, Melissa. So just understanding there's also the broader tech sector in itself by having Serge and Phil here today, how will we incorporate their recommendations into the strategy as well?
So that will form part of the sort of next stage, I guess, of analysis. So we'll take what's been presented in the strategy refresh, and as part of the broader economic development plan work, which is outlined in the next paper, that will canvass a broader range of voices through that process. So we'll be incorporating many different views from different stakeholders through that process.
Great, thank you.
Okay, that looks as though that's all the questions. So, yeah, mover for the motion. I'm happy to move it. Seconded the Mayor. Awesome. Is there any debate? Councillor Culver, did you want to make an amendment or? Yep.
Okay, so I'll just briefly speak to them. Then officers can ask, people can ask officers any questions, and then we can get it seconded. Okay. All right, so you have those in front of you, and look, I just want to be clear at the outset that I do support our investment in tech. I think it is a clear winner for the city. Having said that, I have got my Chair of Planning and Finance hat on as well, and just making sure and I know that we have a lot of trade-offs to think about as we move forward. So my amendment is about being very clear about sequencing and governance. We're about to finalise our triennial plan, which will guide us for the next 3 years. Next month we will be developing up our annual plan, our budget for 26-27, which will include any change in investment for activities such as the tech strategy before we move into a long-term plan, which might look at more sustainable, longer-term funding. And I'm also conscious that we also have a CCO review underway as well. So when we look at how best to deliver some of the activities that we want to see, that will be taken into account. So I think if we were just to approve the recommendations as they're written, it might send a very strong signal that this is we're going to support this no matter what else we may be thinking about in terms of the rest of our annual plan. And I think we just need to be cognizant of, as I said before, the trade-offs. So essentially my amendment is replacing the existing 2 or 3, being very explicit. I know it's sort of in the body of the paper, but these are the recommendations that we report on, that people monitor, and that's why I've just really wanted to be quite clear that this follows the triennial plan and our annual plan budget process, and through obviously the later paper talks about the strategy going up to the other committee of the whole. City strategy. So I ask for your support of these, and you want to ask officers if anybody's got questions.
Are there any questions of the officers to start with? Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Can I just ask what material difference these amendments make to the direction of the paper?
Essentially, the amendments, the detail of the amendments is going to be covered off. The amendments as they've been proposed are more specific in terms of the detail. So we're comfortable with the amendments. The process is going to happen in that way.
Just one more. So is there any impact of delay, holding up, just not putting certainty through these amendments?
We don't see that happening, no.
Thank you.
So it simply clarifies the process rather than changing the process? Okay. All right.
Correct.
Councillor Wheaty will be seconding.
Would you like to speak?
Sure.
Go for it.
I'm just supporting the amendment as part of our governance role to ensure we've tested assumptions and we're comfortable with the direction we're heading in. It's not a criticism of the work that's been done. It's about making sure we give the strongest possible mandate moving forward. Thank you.
Any other debate? Councillor Foon?
Yeah, I'm not sure how I'm going to vote on this, but I guess what I do just want to say is that the initial amendments were about, delay, holding up, as I interpreted them. So I do have a cautiousness around the intention of the amendments, but given I understand we've got plans in place. But I think the vital message that we do want to send this sector is to give them confidence, and that is what I want to make sure is clear out of our actions today. We've got an amazing opportunity, and it was made clear it was the only economic development opportunity Wellington has at scale to take. So this is a big opportunity, and I really don't want to see us holding up with bureaucratic, barriers. Let's just work on being a council of yes, please. That is my statement.
Yeah, on the basis that this doesn't change the process at all, and it certainly doesn't indicate that there's any reluctance to support the tech sector, because I'm actually 100% behind what you guys have presented today. I'm happy to support this as well. Any right reply?
Just very briefly, and just to give Councillor Finson confidence, I mean, this is about being quite clear about what our process is makes it more sustainable going forward, that we've really got a solid background. If we're going to fund this, if we're not going to say it in this subcommittee, we're going to go, we're going to fund it, and then somehow it gets blocked later on down the track somewhere else. So with this, what we're doing is these amendments lay out a very clear process, but very clear that still the Economic Development Subcommittee does support it, but it will go through the normal channels from a governance perspective, so and adds that clarity. So I ask for your support. Does any, you might want to see if anybody wants to take them separately?
We're happy to take them together. Yep, okay, both of them together, please. Motion carried. Okay, now is there actually any debate on, yep, Deputy Mayor?
Kia ora. I just want to thank the submitters all for coming in this afternoon. I think we're back to the amended substantive. Yeah, I'm not debating on the amendments. Thank you for coming in this afternoon. We heard a really fantastic range of feedback and opportunities. As I said in the video that I did before, Wellington is a fintech city, and that is the story we so desperately need to tell. We need reasons to be proud in the city and to help invigorate what's already happening. And stories like that are pouring out of Creative HQ are just so ripe, and that awareness hasn't permeated. We're a beer city, we're a movie city, we're just as much a fintech city, but we haven't quite had that wider awareness come through. So certainly welcome other councillors to join me in my social media explorations as I talk to other firms and just getting that story out there, because the more that we can introduce these founders into the consciousness of our wider city, the more we can have something to feel unique and good about as we build forward. And, you know, look, the track record of places like Creative HQ just speaks for itself, you know, when you actually look at the scale of what's been produced for the relative investment that's gone in. So Carl said something, sorry, the chair, Councillor Tiffenbacher said something, but did really resonate though. Where is the best hit for the cash? And I think that is really going to be the job of this committee over the next sort of year, is to really figure out where are we going to transform Wellington, because we can't do it all. We've got to figure out what we're going to back, and entirely supportive of the paper. I think the amendments do make sense because we're going to have a bit of that discussion. But yeah, just wanted to add that context and thank again the submitters for coming in this afternoon.
Councillor Rogers.
Yeah, also extended my thanks to all the submitters that came in, and also the Creative HQ team that I had a little conversation of in the recess. I guess one of the things that I found interesting reading the paper is I thought the strategy really well articulated what Creative HQ is strong at, and it was really good at articulating how we can continue to invest in the startup space. The question that I felt was, I guess, still unanswered by the strategy was some of the conversations that I have quite frequently, which are for our students who come here and study, spend 3-4 years investing in a degree, and then at the end of it, come to November, when there's 300 of them going for 100 internships, say, where do I get my job? And what I'm hoping to understand when I hopefully get a time to meet with the Creative HQ team is, how does their strategy respond to that? What are we doing to make sure that there are jobs available for them? Not just for people who want to start up and found their own businesses, but want to work in businesses, want to get experience on the ground before doing something of their own. So I think when we zoom up to that higher level and think more broadly about the tech sector, about both established and establishing businesses, I think there can be some real benefit there for Wellington that allows us to retain some of that youthful talent that makes this city so fantastic when they're here studying. So yeah, really love the strategy so far, and look forward to talking more about it.
Mayor, would you like to, oh sorry, did you have another? Yep.
Look, I just want to add my support. I think the other thing is, a word was used, was ecosystem. So we can't just assume that we'll just have one organisation delivering on this strategy, or one or two. It's going to be really important to partner, a bit like what Councillor Rogers was saying. You know, I was privy to some of the work being done by Welly Forge as well, in terms of what they're doing, you know, from a broader perspective. And I know Serge and is involved with that, and we've heard from Phil Royal as well. So I think it's going to be really important, whatever strategies we help fund or partner with, that we also look at the broader ecosystem, because I think there's some real opportunities that don't necessarily cost us money as a council, but where we can help leverage from those organisations already. Thank you.
From my perspective, I think from what we've heard earlier on, really what the sector needs more than anything else is our support to accept the fact that they are an important part of our city, and that they are the driving force for where we will head going forward. So while there is obviously a financial requirement, that requirement seems quite low to me personally for the potential payback. And I think as well, you know, there's people like
Revolut, right to reply?
There's people like, sorry?
Is that your right to reply?
Could be, couldn't it? Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah, okay,
just
cool. It will
standing
be.
orders.
Yeah, and I guess thank you for the instruction. It's awesome. Yeah, so I think the reality is, you know, we've got people like Revolut who are moving to Wellington simply because they see Wellington as a great place to have a tech startup. So in answer to Councillor Rogers' concerns about that ongoing employment opportunities that aren't necessary for startups, I go back to the fact that the more startups we have, the more scale-ups we have, the more we're seen as a tech city, the more we actually create that environment where people can get those jobs. And I think, you know, that's the decision we need to make as a council. Do we see that as the driving force of Wellington going forward? I certainly myself feel as though it is the driving force that we need, and where we need to focus. We are seen as a tech city at the moment. We're seen as a creative city. You know, we can look at the film sector as well. You know, we can look at all the different things that we do in the creative sectors, and we are world leading in these things. but we don't celebrate it quite enough, and we've got to make sure that we don't lose that to other cities that all want this status going forward. And I think, as I said, I think the presenters earlier on have just highlighted the fact that, there's real opportunities out there, and hopefully we as a council will grasp them. Okay. I guess we'll go to a vote. Yeah, that's carried. And surprisingly enough, we're going to invite Melissa to come back. I don't even know why you've left the seat, to be honest.
I'm going to sit in the other chair this time. Kia ora, councillors. I'm very pleased to be introducing the paper on the proposed approach to the refresh of the economic wellbeing direction and developing an economic development plan. So we indicated in the last year that the economic wellbeing strategy, we would like to take a look at refreshing it in this 3rd/4th year of delivery. This is the right time to be doing that. The issues of Wellington are well canvassed. The expectations of the wellbeing strategy are great, and the resources are really limited. So we're proposing to bring back to the subcommittee in Q1 26-27 a scoping paper on how we plan on developing the economic development plan. In summary, the intention is the proposed approach is to lift the strategic intent of the economic wellbeing strategy up into the broader LTP process and work on a very focused economic development plan that is developed in collaboration with a number of different stakeholders across the city. So I'll take the paper as read and very happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Foon.
Sorry, I know you all want to go to the beach now that we can swim everywhere, well, nearly everywhere. Just looking at the economic wellbeing strategy, like we've got some great poem there, but I just want to, and I totally appreciate we need to refine, but I guess how might we transition some of the into how we operate? And so I guess for me, one of the big ones was transitioning to a zero carbon circular economy. We've made great ground. We got an article the other week, can Wellington become the world's first zero waste capital? So how do we not lose the momentum that we've been gaining on some of the PO that we've been working on?
That's a great question, and I think there's probably a bit more to come in terms of the scoping paper. I think that's also for you as elected members and your in the part of the process around the LTP and the where those decisions lie about where the priority focus should be.
Councillor Calvert.
Yeah, just through your chair, just confirming with the economic development team that they will be working in with the council's strategy team in terms of ensuring alignment.
Yes, absolutely. So we have developed this paper in partnership with that team. So that this fits within that process. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have a mover for the motion? Councillor Foon. And a seconder.
Thanks, Councillor
Young. Thank you.
Great.
Councillor Foon.
Yes, thank you. So, yeah, just it's great to see this work being done, and I really appreciate that refinement is what we need to do to get to an economic development plan. That makes sense, particularly as it has been pointed out today that we may need to focus in on specific areas. So very happy with that mahi. But I must say, when John Allen left, the thing that when I said, what are the two things we can do? And he said, double down on events and double down on tech. So I am hoping that that is what we will see in the refinement as it comes through. But I did just want to acknowledge the article, like that, getting media like this is so exciting for Wellington City because we know that we can incubate, because we're small enough to be a trial city. So that is why I'm so excited when we do lead with things, because we actually show the rest of the country or the world or the region how we can do things and achieve them. So I guess, though, what I see is that there will likely be that change around focusing on becoming a circular economy city itself, but maybe that is the way we do things, like have those kaupapa embedded in how we do it in Wellington, which is what makes us so special. And like we heard with the tech sector, it's kind of that empathy we have around the business modelling, that we're doing it with purpose, not just for the sake of making money. And that's what makes us so special. And I'd really love to see that carry on for us in our business kaupapa. So yeah, happy to move the paper, and thanks for the work, everybody.
Councillor Calvert, have you got another amendment?
I have.
Go for it.
And driven very much by very similar things to the last amendment, and it's really being quite clear about. I thought this was replacing number 2, or is it we changing now to number 3?
There was a editorial change in the agenda, so the numbering was incorrect when it was converted.
Okay,
so it's the same clause.
Okay, all right. Just like, this is different numbering. So look, this is essentially just being quite clear that we are going to be, again, it's following on from our triennium plan, our long-term plan, and basically our annual plan as well. So I think it's 3.3 is really my amendments? I'm just trying to, it looks a bit different. Sorry?
So all of it is your amendment. The highlighted points of your amendment that we communicated were 3.2 and 3.3.
Okay, so 3.1 is still
that
the same
as
as
carry over from the original clause 3.
Okay, all right, thank you. So look, again, this is just, you might say stating the obvious, but it just allows that clarity and that alignment to the process that we have to go through, and also sending, giving that clarity to officers as well in terms of how this factors in. So that's, I won't say anything more. Thank you.
Does any questions regarding, before we move into debate? Councillor Foon? Possibly the same one you had on the first amendment?
Same one we had in the first meeting. Does this change anything, stall anything, tighten, make it difficult, create barriers?
Not that we see. I think it's similar to the previous paper. It's providing that clarity. That's fine, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, do we have a seconder for Councillor Owiti? You want to speak? Is there any debate? Oh, excellent. Right of reply?
No right of reply, thank you.
I guess we go on to voting then. That one's carried. Oh yeah, now we've got to debate the whole thing. Awesome. Is there any debate? Oh, it's getting easier and easier, isn't it? We can go back to voting again.
Sorry, mine is not working, but it's a yes.
Superb. In that case, carried unanimously again. So that actually concludes the meeting. Fantastic. And we are on almost on time.
No, you're early, I think.
What time is it?
4:30, isn't it?
Oh, it's 3. Oh, jeez. Do you want to carry on a little bit longer then?
No.
Okay, cool.
Funnily
Okay.
enough.
We're going to close with a karakia, and once again, Councillor Rewiti's going to lead it.
Unuhia, ki te uru tapanui, i wātia ki o mama, te nāko, te dinana, te wairua, i te ara takatū, ko rā I runga, ki ura aki ki runga, ki o wātia, ai rā ku wātia.
Thank you all very much.